What's up, everybody? I am Ian Douglas. I'm the author of Tech Interview Guide. Got a little Tech Interview Guide watermark down there in the bottom corner, and just want to say hello to everybody. Did a little bit of 3D printing this week. Got Stream logo up here. Stream is my employer. I am their director of engineering learning. Have a good time at that job. Looking forward to getting into it this week. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about helping all of you get ready for tech interviews. So my whole reason for doing this stream is to help people out with tech interview preparation and teach you about what's in interviewing and things like that. So feel free to drop questions in chat. But I thought tonight what I would do is something a little different. I kind of like posted on, it was either LinkedIn or Twitter, like, I wonder if I should talk about this Python script that I wrote that basically takes these longer Q&A videos that I've done and like chop them up into smaller pieces and then like splice together like an intro video, things like that. And should I talk about that on the stream? And actually, surprisingly, had a number of people say like, yeah, could you walk through that? That would be cool. So I thought I'd do that. But in the meantime, if there are folks that have questions and want to sort of drop those in chat as we go, I'm happy to address any kind of interview related topics kind of as we go for the night. So cool. Let's dive in. Got some quieter music going today. Let's see. I think I'm gonna change that up. Let's get some a little more lively, shall we? There we go. Bump that up a little bit. All right, cool. So here we go. So as always, you can do a bang help or exclamation point help in chat at any time, and you'll see a list of commands pop up in the Twitch chat, and you can see like how to contact me on LinkedIn, Twitter, all those places. Get information about doing resume reviews. I do resume reviews. Haven't done one in a while. I've been waiting to get someone on the stream. Her name's Margot. So I'm waiting for Margot to get in touch with me because she really wants to do a bunch of resume reviews with me. She's an HR recruiter at Twilio. And we worked together when I worked at SendGrid. She was part of SendGrid, and they later got bought by Twilio. She's super psyched to do some resume reviews with me. So waiting to get her on the stream. But this Thursday, I've got a whole panel. I've got a bunch of people. Some of them you've seen before, some of you haven't. Aaron Mullenix and Martin McGovern are coming back. Also going to have, who else is on there? I got a whole list of fun people coming in. Let's get over to my calendar invite. There we go. So who do I have? I got Aaron Mullenix, who runs a YouTube channel. I'll put all these links down in the YouTube description later, so like and subscribe and all that. So Aaron Mullenix is coming back. Martin McGovern from Career Therapy is coming back. I've got Lex Stewart from the Turing School of Software and Design. I got Crystal from Join Year One. Crystal is someone that I met over LinkedIn, and they're doing some really cool things, helping people get jobs and interview training and so on. I believe her company went through Techstars. I've also got Brett Dangerfield. Brett and I met while he was working at Return Path, I believe, in Broomfield, Colorado. And we got involved in a local Python meetup. And our whole topic for Thursday is going to be, what questions do I ask at an interview? So I know that I said I was going to put something together, and I decided instead of just me putting something together, I was going to get a whole bunch of people together and just hear their thoughts and perspectives on what kinds of questions should you ask, what kinds of things are important to ask, what kinds of questions should you avoid asking at an interview, and things like that. And then how do we as engineering managers, HR people, coaching, like career coaches, what do we recommend saying or not saying, asking, not asking, things like that. So I wanted to get a whole bunch of people on the stream just to hear a bunch of perspectives. So that's happening this Thursday, September 16th, 7 p.m. So same time, same place. You're in the right place, just a couple of days early. So come back on Thursday for sure. But for tonight, I'm going to switch over to this screen here. And let's see. So that's my Ubuntu window going right there. I think I'm going to switch over to my code window first. I can get my code window to show up. Where's my code window? And why won't you show up? Let's see. The Ubuntu window is showing up and it should not. Oh, OBS, why do you do this to me? Yeah, so the Ubuntu window works. For some reason, it doesn't want to show my VS Code. So let's try this. Go to properties. We'll just try to reload the page here. See if I can refresh it or anything. It does not want to refresh or anything. It's there. It's kind of behind the scenes. Let me just get the Ubuntu one out of the way here. Oh, that's why. There we go. All right, so there's our code. So this is basically the Python script that I wrote, and it uses a utility called ffmpeg that will basically go through and help me split a video into pieces. So there were a handful of things that I wanted to do. I wanted a way to give it a timestamp of like a starting time and ending time, or a starting time and a duration. And then, and so what I started out with was the idea of what file format did I want to read. And so the first field in here is just the file name. The second file, or the second field, is the starting timestamp. And then the second one, I thought I either wanted a duration or I wanted an ending timestamp. I wasn't sure which one I was going to go for. In the end, I went with an end timestamp on there. And then the wording after here is what I wanted to figure out. How could I automate building a thumbnail for these? And so that came in a little bit later, but I started by like dumping that out to a text file. So in the file window where I see all the files get split out, I would have a file for the split video, but then I'd also have a split file, or I'd have a separate file similarly named for the title of the video that I could just paste into YouTube at that point. Ultimately, I'd love to get this Python script to a point where it could upload the video to YouTube, set the thumbnail, set the description, and all that stuff, and kind of automate this a little bit more. But for now, it's just a manual sort of one-time kind of process. So knowing that I wanted to do some kind of CSV style file to get started with that, I originally thought, well, I'll just do comma separated. And I thought, well, if I want commas in this, then I didn't want to get too hung up on libraries and things like that to split out a CSV file. So again, if you are dropping by in chat, feel free to just drop questions in chat. Otherwise, I'm just going to be walking through this for the evening. All right, so what do we got? So this is basically what I started with. So I wanted the file name. Initially, when I built this out, it was the file name and then like time 1, time 2, time 3, time 4. And basically it was going to go from time 1 until time 2, and then time 2 until time 3, and time 3 until time 4. For those of you that that watch my video, you know sometimes I leave a bit of a pause in there, or I'll say hi to someone in chat. And I didn't really want those to be part of these short YouTube videos. And so what I changed it up to was just a single file name with a start time and an end time, and then build in some sort of description. Because the way that I had this originally, I didn't have a way to leave myself a description over like what question did I ask at this point. So what I do is once I finish recording a really long video like that, is I play it back and I kind of keep track of the start time and the end time on the video review that I just loaded up in Windows, and just pause and start, or pause and play. And then once I know like what question is being asked at that point, then I just add a line to this file. Any line that's blank gets skipped. Any line that starts with a comment marker also gets skipped. So that way I can just kind of leave these things in here and kind of remember the format that I follow. And then you could see kind of like all the different videos I've got, not including the blank lines. I've got about 60 videos or so. And originally I thought, well, I'll just blast them all up on YouTube all at the same time. But it turns out YouTube isn't very friendly for that. YouTube does not play nicely with just dumping tons and tons of videos all at the same time. And so what I did is I went through and I manually scheduled each one of these to show up every day. So the entire month of September, there's a new video Monday through Friday, or Monday through Saturday, I think every week. And then in October, I think I do Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But as I do more of these longer videos, I'll also split those up, and I'll kind of interleave those onto the Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday schedule. So if I do more of these Q&A sessions, I'll interleave those. So like, for example, tonight, primarily want to go through this Python script, but if people drop by and they leave a question in chat, I'll splice that out and I'll make a short video about that. And we'll actually see like all of this running in practical time. So that was the file format that I wanted to start with, something along those lines. And so the first thing I do here in Python is I basically say, open up that file and read everything, split by new line character. So every line is a new sort of entry. And then for each one of those rows, if there's something on that row, if it starts with a hash mark, just continue. So that just tells it to skip that line. Otherwise, split on that pipe character. And I use bits, I got all these different bits of things in here. So the first one is the origin file name. And then what I do is I take the file extension and I just call it, and I just wanted something in here that I could sort of reuse as a search and replace later on. So I just call it .marker. And you can see down here, when I highlight that, it highlights down here, I've got a replace where I replace the marker with something else. So I'll talk about that. So I've got an origin file, and then I start to build this destination file, which is basically the start of the file name, but then I change kind of what's left in there. And then as long as I have at least those 4 elements in there, I wanted to give myself flexibility of adding stuff later on. I thought about adding descriptions in there. So if I had links and things like that I wanted to share in the description, I could do it in there. Ultimately, I want to put all this stuff in the database. And like I said, kind of automate this a little bit more where something can just read these out of the database, know where to go find the video, and just go like upload that stuff for me. So one tool that I'm debating using is a Python library called Splinter, which can basically open a browser and like do things in a browser. My only worry there is that Google's going to start throwing the, hey, are you a bot? Like which of these pictures, has a fire hydrant or something in it? So I'm a little bit worried about getting tripped up on those if it thinks that I'm not actually logged in as a human, uploading these videos. I'm sure that Google would much prefer me using their API, which I'm not opposed to. I love using APIs. I love building APIs. But what I wanted to do on this one is be able to log into like LinkedIn and Twitter and all the social platforms. Like I've got a Facebook business page for the interview prep email series, and I want to be able to post the videos on all those things and just say like, hey, new videos up, blah blah blah. Like here's the title, here's the description, here's a link to it. Like, subscribe, blah blah blah, and market it out that way and just blast that out. So I can just hit a button saying like upload this video, because what I've found happened was when I go into YouTube Studio and I split my big video into all these videos, when I upload them all separately into playlists, if you go view the playlist, it says that it makes it seem like the playlist is private because none of the videos are showing up until they actually publish. So whatever date I actually tell YouTube, like, hey, go publish this video on this date, and it happens to be in that playlist. I think one playlist, it was like the application process playlist that I've got on YouTube, where I just break out all these videos on like how to apply for jobs. Until those actually get published, when you look at the playlist, there's nothing there. It just says like all these videos they're present, but they're all private because they don't publish until a certain date. I wish YouTube would just say like there's no videos. Like I wish it would actually hide the video completely instead of saying there's a video here, you're just not allowed to see anything about it, or even say like when it's going to get published or anything like that. So what I'm thinking is if I can automate this a little bit more with a date and say I want this video to publish on this date, that it'll just go through and it'll actually upload it on that date and make it public, and notify subscribers and things like that the video's out. But that'll be later. So let's see. So from here, I wanted to work on the thumbnail. I actually built a thumbnail secondarily. So I built all the video encoding stuff, and then I came back and I did the thumbnail. So I'll talk about the video or the thumbnail a little bit later. So the first things that I wanted to do was work on that start time, end time, and the title. And so that title, again, it comes from this fourth field here. But for the start and the end time, I needed to know the duration because the utility that I'm using, FFmpeg, it actually needs a duration right here. And so it needed to know how long that clip was. And so then I'm like, well, now I got to go back and either like manually calculate it myself and say I want to start at, 5 minutes, like exactly the 5 minute mark, and I want it to go for 4 minutes and 5 seconds. And I was going to have to manually do all that. I'm like, ain't got time for that. So what I thought I would do is figure out, well, how can I get the duration in seconds if I just have times? So what I did in Python is I just said, okay, well, let's pretend August 30th, and I'm just going to put the start time and end time in there, and then just do a difference on them. So Python has a really cool thing where if you use date time, this string p time, it basically says like use this this string of a date based on this format. And so it's got year, month, day, hour, minute, second. And so it says based on that format, go build a date object out of that. Well, Python then will allow you to subtract date objects from one another. And then from that resulting object, it has a method called total seconds. And so by giving it the start time and the end time, I had to give it a date still. So I just picked some arbitrary date of August 30th. I think that's when I started building the script. Only being able to type with one hand, I had to work at this over a long period of time. Not wearing the sling today. I've got a little more movement in my arm, which is good. Still doing PT. My physical therapist would very much like me to be in my sling, so I hope you're not watching my videos. Anyway, so Python will allow you to subtract those objects and then give you the total seconds in there for the duration. So that made that super easy from a Python perspective to go through and work through that. So let's look at, nope, that's not what I want to do. I wanted to close. There we go. So then what I wanted to do is I wanted to come up with, okay, well, I wanted to take that destination file and I wanted to make a new temporary video file out of that. So I wanted to remove the colons from the file name because I do use Windows for the broadcast software that you're watching the live stream in. I use Windows for that. And Windows doesn't do well if your file name has a colon in there. So I had to replace that with something else. So I just removed the colon completely. So it's just year, month, day, hour, minute, second, all just mashed together as numbers. And what I'm doing here is that dot marker that I had up here, I'm basically saying I want to replace that dot marker with this whole temp plus the start time as part of this temporary file name. And then I had an output file where I kind of do the same. And I'm trying to remember why I used temp file and output file, but I'm sure I'll remember why I did that later. And then the other thing I wanted to do was I wanted to take all these short videos and I wanted to put a common intro and outro video on either side where the intro is like, hey, it's Ian from Tech Interview Guide. And the outro is like, hey, if you like that, like and subscribe. And I wanted a way to automate just like mashing all of those things together. Well, the problem is, even though I recorded all of the videos, including the intro and the outro, through my broadcast software, the encoding, like the bit rates and things of the MP4 videos were a little different. So it wasn't as easy as literally just mashing the files together. There's a little bit of processing that had to happen to make sure they were the same size, like the same resolution, same frame rate, bit rate of audio and all that kind of stuff. And so I needed a way of figuring out how to splice that. So thank you, Stack Overflow, for letting me find those kinds of answers. And I am paying attention to chat. So if people are dropping by in chat, feel free to drop questions about interview prep as we go. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of keep working through this Python script a little bit. From here, I wanted a little bit of debug information. So I wanted to like track the start time, end time, what the calculated duration was going to be, and what that temporary file name was going to be. And then the first thing I do, this is where I'm calling on FFmpeg to say, hey, go take that big video and now go split it from the start time for duration seconds and go dump that into a second file. And that's where I use that first temporary file that I built up here. So in Python, we can use this F operator in front of a quote, and that allows us then to use curly braces with a variable name or a Python instruction or something like that in between the curly braces. And there are mechanisms like this in a lot of other programming languages as well. But in Python, we can use the F here. In previous versions of Python, you would build the string and then you do like dot format. And you would still have the curly braces in the string, but you would do a dot format function call afterwards and say like which element got filled into which placeholder and so on. But in Python 3, they've made that a little simpler now. So all I'm doing here is I'm building a string of how I would actually go out to my operating system and actually call FFmpeg on here. And so this is just like say yes to everything. And then this is my input file. The SS is the start time. The -T is the duration of how many seconds you want. And then I forget what the asynchronous thing was. It was something to do with like the audio and video or something like that. And then the output file name that it's going to. And so that was the temporary file name. Now I print that out. I have the actual like operating system call commented out, but I'm actually going to go run this, so I'm going to comment this back out. Sometimes I was going back in and I realized I had made a typo in here, and so it was actually building the thumbnail image with my typo in there, because computers do what we tell them, not what we mean for them to do. And so I had to go back in and regenerate some thumbnails, but I didn't want to reprocess all of the audio and video again, and so I had these ffmpeg commands actually commented out, so they wouldn't actually execute. And actually, I don't need that print statement anymore, so I'm going to take that out. So then, so now that I've got just that temporary file, now that's where I wanted to put the intro on the front and the outro on the other end. And so ffmpeg can also do that. So -y says like, answer yes to any questions. And that would be things like, hey, that file already exists. Do you want to overwrite that file? And then you've got -i is your input file. And because we had 3 different files, we have the intro, we have that temporary file, and then we have the outro. We can just use that -i command multiple times. And then this last part here is a little bit confusing, but this is basically where we're saying like, go process the video from file 0, the audio from file 0, and then the video from file 1, the audio from file 1, the video from file 2, the audio from file 2. I want to concatenate them all together, and I want a single video channel, a single audio channel. That's my understanding of these things. I didn't go too deep into the documentation. But then I'm mapping it all into a single video and a single audio, and I want to call that my output file. And that's where I was building the second file name up here, where I take out the .temp and I replace the marker thing here. But what I do in here as part of this output file is I was actually tracking a number. So as it was going through, it was keeping track of like, okay, well, this is the first file. Actually, no, sorry, I was tracking a file number in there. Like this was file number 1, file number 2, file number 3. I took that out and I put the actual timestamp in there instead. It made it a little easier for me to track against the split file here. It's like, well, what was that 13th file? I had to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to find the 13th one. Where now, because I use that start timestamp, it'll have like 004454, and I can go, oh, that's this file name. So I know exactly which one to go look at. So I'm actually going to uncomment these so we can actually see how long this takes. It actually works faster than you'd think. And then what I do from here, in order to generate the, well, actually, so that was just the video. And so that actually processed all the videos. And then the next thing I wanted to do was build the thumbnail image that you see on YouTube. So if you go to my YouTube channel, it's youtube.com/Ian Douglas. What you'll see on there is a thumbnail. It looks exactly the same font, same color and everything. But I wanted to split 25 characters per line of text. And so this command in Python basically says I want to build an array of strings where I take the original title and I want at most 25 characters per string inside this array. And so this builds an array of strings from the original title, but it splits them up by 25 characters. So if we come back up here and we look at I got ghosted after a week-long tech challenge, well, if I highlight that many characters, we can see down here at the very bottom it says 31 selected. So 31 characters selected. So if I grab just this much, it says 22 selected. And so that thumbnail, it's only going to have these first little bits of the string in there. And then the next one is week-long tech challenge. That's 24 selected. And so now I know that this thumbnail made 2 lines of text. Some of these get into 3 lines of text. And because I don't know necessarily, like I didn't want to have to come up with like, how do I shorten all of these things down into only like 2 lines? Or how do I make sure it doesn't go beyond 4 lines and things like that? I had to be a little bit careful about that when I was building these. But I basically had to do a little bit of math and some algebra in here to try to figure out, okay, well, based on the file size of the thumbnail image, how do I figure out how to center the text sort of vertically on the page, although I still wanted the watermark on there, and I wanted the text to be like kind of centered above where the watermark was. So from the watermark to the top of the image, I wanted to kind of center the actual thumbnail text there. And so I did a little bit of math. It's on a piece of paper here somewhere, where I was basically trying to figure out, okay, well, if this is the center line, and I've got 2 lines of text, then, you know, it has to go here and here from an XY coordinate point of view. And so that's all this code is doing here is trying to figure out if I've got 2 lines or 3 lines of text, how to calculate the starting position of each line from the title there. So, what's up, Preacher Next? Good to see you on chat. I'm just going through this Python script that I use to kind of split up my Q&A videos. I had a couple of people ask for it. But if you've got interview prep questions, I'm happy to take those at any time. Feel free to just start dropping those in chat, and I'll address those instead. Otherwise, I'm just nerding out on a little Python tonight, talking about how I built this out and so on. But happy to answer any interview prep questions that you got. So that was basically like me trying to figure out like where those things were going to go. I do kind of throw an error for myself if the line is going to be too long. Like if it's going to wrap into a fourth line or something like that, then that would be bad. And then this is basically like go build that actual line of text. Now, the reason that I had to do this a whole bunch of times is because just putting blue text on that blurred background, the text didn't stand out very well. And so these 4 lines that I've got highlighted are basically doing an outline in black. And so it's basically taking the same text and it's shifting it over a couple of pixels, and then it shifts it over the other way a couple of pixels, and then it shifts it up a couple of pixels and shifts it down a couple of pixels. And that's enough to actually draw like a half decent outline around each letter of the text. It's kind of a cheap little workaround, but it worked great. And then the actual text itself, and then this is kind of that pale blue color that I use. And then from there, I'm basically saying, like, if the file already exists, then delete that file and then save that thumbnail file over top. And then I delete the temporary video file. So after it goes through the big video and it makes that temporary video to then splice and concatenate the other two, then I delete that temporary file because I don't need it anymore. So that's pretty much it from that perspective. And so if I come back in here, let me go check real quick which videos I have left in this folder. So I have my Q&A session from September 5th in there still. So let's go back to that split file. And we'll go to September 5th, and I'll just reprocess one of these. So I'll just grab this one down here. So I signed an offer, and then I got invited to an interview elsewhere. I asked a question similar to that on another stream, but this one was a little different. So I'm just going to go through and reprocess this one. So let me switch back over to my Ubuntu screen. Oops. Come on, Ubuntu, where are you? Where did you go? Now Ubuntu is missing. Let's try that again. Video player. That's okay. There we go. All right, I got to name things properly here. All right, so there's the file name that I have. So let's just go run that. So I'm going to do Python 3, and that was just my video split. So here's all the outputs. So the first thing it was doing was giving me the start and the end time, and then the duration in seconds. So I can see it's going to take 337 seconds worth of that video, and then I've got that temporary file name. This is all the output from the FFmpeg. This first one is actually just splitting out the temporary video, which happened really quick. And then this block down here is where it's actually splicing them all together. And so you can see down here, there's a little more involved with the audio levels and the resolutions and things like that, just making sure that they're all going to build the same way. What I found otherwise, because even though I was recording everything in OBS, the broadcast software that I use here, when it was splitting out that temporary video, the audio played at regular speed, but the video played back at like 3x or 4x the speed. And so you see my mouth, but the audio plays out normally. Well, then the video ends, and it's just me going on my face. Meanwhile, the audio is still playing. And so I had to figure out, like, how do I get the right instructions in here to do all that. So this is basically going through, and it's basically examining the intro video, the middle intro, and the outro video, figuring out all their different bit rates, and then normalizing the resolution and the bit rate on all those, making everything 1080p. And then it's going to save all of that as a video. It takes a minute or two per video, but then we'll basically let that run from there. It won't take too much longer to process that. Cool, so that's that. So if we come back over here to the code editor, so then what it does after that is it actually goes through and it builds that thumbnail image. So let me see if I can get a browser window or something going to show you what's happening in there. right, let's see if I can get. So let's rename you browser. All right, so for the browser window, I'm going to go to here. All right, so here's my browser window. And we got all of the, so here's the original video. This is the original video here. I don't know whether this will actually, oh, it actually does show up in the browser. So what I was doing is I was just kind of skipping ahead and looking at the start and the end timestamps in the video itself to try to figure out where I wanted to sort of split those things out. And then here's the text file, which is just the title that came through. So, you know, that way, as I'm viewing kind of the file list, I can just open this file, copy and paste into YouTube for the title. And then there's the thumbnail image that got built for me. And so the core image is just this background of the laptop and the coffee and the tech interview guide, and then it overlays this other content on top of it. So based on how it was splitting everything into 25 characters per line. So that was that. So it made that for me. And then if we go through and we look at the actual video, not sure if the audio of this is actually playing through or not. I'm guessing no. But anyway, but it's the intro video, and if we go to about the 26-second mark, then that's where the actual video starts. And so here's where it actually split out that video for me. And then if I skip all the way over to the end, then this is where it does kind of that outro video. So you see me just blah, 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 doing my thing, and then there's the wipe screen, and then here's the outro. It says, thanks for watching, you know, like and subscribe, blah, blah, blah. And so it spliced all that together. And it was a lot of fun just kind of seeing that in action. And I can go back and I can run this at any time. Ideally, I would probably make some sort of command line switch. Or I'd love to make a command line switch that would allow me to tell it to process the video or not. So that it doesn't have to process the video and just go through and like generate the thumbnails or something like that. But I can also just as easily go back through the file and just comment or uncomment certain lines. In this case, I uncommented that one because that was the only uncommented line. That was the only video that it tried to kind of split out. So yeah, so that was basically that Python script. So again, the next couple of things that I want to build in here would be, you know, could I use the Splinter library in Python to like log into Google for me, upload the video, upload the thumbnail, set the description, you know, all that stuff, just so I can kind of standardize those descriptions a little bit more and get people looking at the daily email series a little bit more, stuff like that. And then, you know, or to promote like other links and things like that that I talk about in the video, like have some way of, while I'm reviewing the video and kind of building out this file in the first place, that I could, you know, have like another field here where I basically build the description for each one, and then have you know, the automation of this actually go through and set all that stuff on YouTube for me. It would be really nice. Not there yet, but we'll kind of see how that goes. But so that was it. That's you know, it didn't take very long to write. I mean, considering I only had one hand to type with at the time, but it generally went pretty well to kind of build that up and debug it a little bit here and there. And then of course, as I'm uploading all these videos and like putting the thumbnails on YouTube, I realized like I'm actually really bad at typos. And so I had to go back and reprocess a bunch of thumbnails, but that was fine because the thumbnail generation is super, super fast. It takes like no time at all. So yeah, that was pretty much it. Let's see, anybody else still hanging out in chat? Creature Next, you still hanging with me there? How are things going on your end? Got any interviews coming up? Anything I can help with on the interview side of thing, job side of thing? Any kind of coaching, anything like that? All right, well, we'll give Creature Next a couple of moments to chat in there, see if they got anything going on. But yeah, like I said, I'd love to have a way to kind of automate like you know, go promote this on Twitter, go promote this on LinkedIn, and just have that be like an automated, like, go post that every day. Just so I don't have to manually go in every day and like do this stuff. But like I said, the way that YouTube has been doing it for me, because I had to go into the YouTube Studio and like schedule when all these things were going to go live. So if I come over here, let's go back to my browser and show you what happens on the YouTube side of things. So if I go over to YouTube, let's see, go over to my channel. If I go over to my videos, I see all of the videos that I've published. So these are all the public ones, and so you get to see all the cool little thumbnails, and you get to see all the interjected things that go on for the actual like Thursday night, Sunday night streams. And then if I go over to my playlists, so let's go over to like the interview stage or application stage. So I'm going to pause this so you all can see all the videos, or I can see all the videos in here, but none of you can. If you try to load this playlist, it'll actually show that most of these are marked as private, and you can't actually watch any of them. And that's kind of annoying. I would love to either suppress them or have a way for YouTube to say like, hey, this video isn't published yet, or it's coming soon, or it's going to get published on such and such a date. Because if I come back over here and I go to my YouTube Studio and I go to my content, we can see like these things are scheduled all the way out to like mid-November. Even though I've put them in a playlist, they're just showing up as a private video in the playlist. But I don't know how to say like, just don't show it at all. Like, I don't want to show it like that video even a little bit until that scheduled date. So, Creature Next just eating dinner. That's okay. That's all right. It's good to eat food and take care of your body. Nothing wrong with that. But I hope you're doing well. Hope things are good on your end. So yeah, so I've got all the videos scheduled all the way through. So let's see, up until today. So all of these ones got published, and then all the rest of these have 0 views and 0 comments, obviously, because they're not published yet. But it's cool seeing some of the views ticking up on some of these things. Like, number one thing people forget to do is like get a good night's sleep before an interview. How to write a cover letter, that one's ticking up a little bit. The leak code one I did, I think it's got close to 400 views now, which I'm pretty happy about. So some of these have actually gotten quite a number of views. Yeah, there's the leak code one. It's getting close to 400. So pretty jazzed about that. I'm glad that this content is helping people and they're kind of spreading the word. So it's good to see that. Love helping people out. Love sort of sharing my thoughts and perspectives, but I also love having people on the stream to kind of hear their perspectives as well. So I'm really looking forward to this Thursday and having that panel. And what's up, Dota? Good to see you. Worked 7 hours today. Today's Sunday. What are you doing working on a Sunday? Hopefully not coding. But hope you're doing well, Dota. 7 hours. 7 hours. You're a little hung up on the 7-hour thing. How many hours was it? I hope you're doing well. So yeah, so basically for the video, Dota, I think since you just got here, I was basically just walking through a Python script that I wrote that takes those longer Q&A videos and like slices them up into all these individual ones, and kind of showed off, sort of how that stuff works and how I was doing all that. You work 7 days a week. I usually can't code more than 6 hours at a time. Yeah, I mean that's actually really typical on the job. By the time you factor in meetings and stand-ups and lunch and all that kind of stuff, most programmers are actually not sitting coding for like 8+ hours every day. It's actually a little bit unrealistic, I think. But yeah, if you're in chat, so I pretty much just walked through this Python script. I had a handful of people ask, to kind of share how I do that. So I thought I'd walk through that, but I'm happy to just hang out and answer interview prep questions. Is what I'm here for. So if you got interview stuff coming up, or if you've got questions about job hunt, company research, you want help, trying to find, keywords on a job post or anything like that, I'm happy to nerd out on that. I'm just going to switch my screen here. Go over to this screen. There we go. Cool. So that was that Python script. Hope that that walkthrough helped out. How many coders are at a medium-sized tech company? Well, it depends on the company. Like, for example, when we were at SendGrid, SendGrid is a technology company, and so the whole product was the technology. And at Stream, for example, Stream, where I work, this is their logo up here. I 3D printed it. Stream, for example, like, again, we're an API company, we're a SaaS company, and so our product is the API. And so most of our team is actually engineering. But I've been at other companies where most of the team is like sales and marketing and customer success, and the engineering team is actually quite small, relatively speaking. So it really depends on what the company's doing. If they're a product-based company or a finance-based company, the size of the engineering team will vary quite a lot. So yeah, it really depends. Like, you would think 10 is a big team. I mean, so within a company, like, so even at SendGrid, I mean, we had, I want to say 100 plus engineers. I mean, it wasn't like all 100 of us were working on the same project. We were all kind of divvied up into our own kind of thing. Like, some people worked on the customer portal, and some people worked on the website, and some people worked on the mail pipeline, and some people worked on, this tool or that tool, or, the last team I was on, we were building like a whole newsletter interface for SendGrid. And so every team's going to have like their responsibility. Is 5 typical? I mean, it depends on the company. So if you've only got 10 engineers total at your company, it may be more likely that you're all kind of helping each other out on a little bit of everything. But again, it depends on the structure of the company and how they want to sort of, separate the teams and separate the responsibilities of the teams. There was a company in town that was 50, and that shocked me. I mean, you think about like Google, Facebook, like the FANG companies, they're going to have like tens of thousands of engineers in their companies. So again, it depends on the size of the company, depends on what they do, to really depend on the engineering effort that they need to get that job done. And then, like I said, like, this company that you mentioned that had like 50 engineers, I mean, they could have like a 75 person company and 50 of those are engineers, or those 50 engineers could work for like 1,000+ person company. It really depends on the nature of the company and so on. How often do engineers switch teams? That's a good question. Let's see, when I was at SendGrid, I worked on, I think, 3 or 4 different teams. Well, sorry, I should better qualify that. My team was put on like 3 or 4 different projects. Now, at some point, we did kind of like split the people up, and other people worked on different projects. But for the most part, the group that I helped hire was like an amazing group of guys and women. And we worked together on a project, and then that project ended, and we all moved together onto another project. And then after that project, I think we started kind of splitting up a little bit to work on different things. And then I moved out to Colorado, and I was put on a completely different team. So I would say there's not really a typical timeline for how long you stay on a particular project, but I will say it's important that you sort of stand up for yourself. If you feel like you've been on a project a long time and you want something fresh, you need to talk to your manager about it. You need to do that sooner than later. You don't want to get totally burned out on something and say, hey, you know what? I don't enjoy my job anymore. Like, I want to do something else. You don't you don't want to get to that point in your career. You don't want to get to the point where you hate what you do, because then you're not bringing your best self and you're not bringing 100% to the job. Hiya, good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Hope the family's doing good. How's the little one doing? Good to see you drop by the stream. Taya was one of my students at Turing. And so as far as like how often they switch, again, if it's like a consultancy kind of company, like a Pivotal Labs or something like that, you're probably going to switch from project to project every 4 to 6 months, partly because they want to keep fresh eyeballs on things and fresh perspectives on things, but also to make sure that their engineers aren't burning out on a particular project for a long period of time. And so some companies are better about that rotation. Some are a little bit like, once you're on that team, you're on that team. That's your team forever. And so it's really up to you to advocate for yourself. If you want to move to something else, you have to tell your manager, you have to make that known within the company. Would Thoughtbot be considered a consultancy company? Is Thoughtbot a consultancy? Let's go have a look at Thoughtbot, shall we? I love Thoughtbot, by the way. They have some really, really, really cool open source projects, and one of them that I use, if you go to go to GitHub, github.com/thoughtbot/laptop. It's a whole laptop setup script, and you literally run one shell script command, and it like downloads everything that you need as a developer on your system. Now it's kind of like what they use, for their own internal tech stack and things like that. But it's a lot of full stack development tools. Like it pulls down Homebrew and Postgres and I think MongoDB and Z Shell and like all this stuff. Some of it is normal on a Mac now to install anyway. But anyway. So looking at their homepage, Thoughtbot is your expert design and development partner. So yeah, it sounds like they're a staff augmentation kind of firm. So again, a company like Thoughtbot, they're more likely to change folks out every couple of months. Riker decided to come by and say hi to everybody. Come on, get up here. This is Riker. He's my buddy. Oh, yes, you are. You're my buddy, aren't you? And you're huge. No, don't do that on the microphone. Don't do that on the microphone. Yeah, do that on the microphone. Hey, would you like a cookie? Like a cookie? All right. I'll give a cookie to him. He'll leave me alone for 30 seconds. All right, here, have a cookie. All right. But yeah, Thoughtbot has some really, really amazing open source projects and stuff like that on GitHub. So definitely check them out. They're a really, really cool company. I don't want to use a company computer. Yeah, Pivotal Labs is a good company. They're really big and they're based all over the place. So I don't want to use a company computer. I don't know how to tell them that, but whatever. So not really sure what you're getting at there. My question on that is like, are you looking to do like other development work? You just don't want to use the company computer for it? Are you doing it like, do you want to do it during the day or do you want to do it at night? So my thoughts on that are, you will typically sign as part of your employment agreement that you're not going to do things using computer equipment, networking, like no resources whatsoever of the company if you're going to do like side projects. And that would also be my recommendation. If you want to work on a side project, that's totally cool. But if it's not something that you want attached to your job, then you need to bring your own laptop. You need to, figure out how to do a hotspot off your modem or off your cell phone, so that you can get internet access and literally like go out of the building somewhere else, like go find a park or go find a coffee shop and spend your lunch hour there working on what you're doing, and then pack all that stuff up and go back to the office. Because anytime you use their network, their computer, their resources, their printer, anything like that, they could potentially own the work that you're working on, and you don't want that to happen. And you also, just generally speaking, you don't want a company to take a project that you're working on or somehow you make them liable for like a contribution to an open source project that, has a security problem. Now that comes back on you, which comes back on them. So yeah, I generally recommend if you're going to do that stuff, like do it off hours, do it on your own time. More and more states are passing laws that the work that you do on your own time doesn't belong to a company. But check for local legislation, stuff like that. Going back through chat, I download and install a lot of stuff that they can't let me do. As a consultant contractor, do I own my code? Again, it depends a little bit on what you use to build the code, and it depends on your employment agreement. So a lot of employers, they'll make you sign an employment agreement saying like anything you invent, anything you develop, anything you create belongs to us. But there are a lot of states like California, for example, they've specifically passed laws that say anything you do on your own time does not necessarily belong to the company. It would be a really good idea. It would almost behoove you a little bit to have a chat with someone at work and say, hey, I want to work on this side project. It has nothing to do with work. It's not using any work resources, no libraries from work, nothing that got developed at the office is part of this project. It's completely my own. This is the scope of what I want to build for this project. Can I get somebody to sign off saying you explicitly don't want rights to this software that I build? Most companies would be okay with that. In fact, some companies will say if you've started working on side projects before you actually come into employment with us, you need to give us a list of those projects and a description of those projects, because again, they want to disclaim ownership on those. They want to explicitly say, no, you own those because you did them on your own time or you did them before coming to work for us. Otherwise, your employment agreement may say anything you do develop while you are employed by them full time belongs to them. And so you need to be very careful about reading your employment contract to know, do they actually own what you develop or invent. And it will also depend on regional laws and things like that too. So you want to look at all of that stuff depending on where you're located, to figure out whether they could potentially own what you've got. And if you think they could, then you need to explicitly get someone at the company, like get someone from the legal department or something to explicitly write a letter saying, we disclaim ownership of this project, explicitly, and get it signed off or whatever, because then you know that you can continue to work on it safely. Now, some companies are totally cool with that. They're like, yeah, absolutely. Keep growing, keep learning, keep building, keep doing your thing. Other companies are like, well, but are you going to get distracted by that? Like if you launch some side project and, are you going to have to support your customers during the day when you're supposed to be working for us? Or, are you going to be panicking about downtime or a security bug or something like that while you're on the job with us, because you're supposed to be giving us, full-time hours? And so some companies will start to get a little wary about knowing that you're working on stuff on the side, but some companies are very cool about it. So again, you have to have a conversation with your manager and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing a side project. Is there some process I need to go through within the company so that the company doesn't own what I build? And you may have to explain the idea. At least give them like an elevator pitch of like, this is what I'm thinking about building, so that they can explicitly say, yeah, we don't want a part of that. And at which point you say, I need that in writing, because I want to continue developing it on my own time. I want to do it on evenings and weekends, but I don't want the company to own it. So I need you to explicitly, disclaim that ownership and copyright. So, and then in chat says he just verbally said he owns it. Well, again, you gotta figure out from your employment contract and talk to someone who takes care of legal matters at the company whether they actually do own it. And if it's a project that competes with what they do, then yeah, they could own it. So again, that'll come up as part of your employment contract with non-compete clauses and things like that. So you need to go over those contracts. Most of us, we just like, oh, if I sign this, I get a paycheck. Cool. I'm just going to sign this thing and not even read it. The longer I've spent in the tech industry, the more I actually like scrutinize and actually go through and read these employment contracts, just to make sure that something like that doesn't happen. Because I want to be able to work on stuff on the side. When I was getting my job at Turing, I was still in the process of writing all this interview prep material and career prep and coaching and things like that. And I actually had to have a conversation with the guy that runs the school to say, hey, like, I want to maintain the copyright on this stuff. I want to continue to develop it, but I want to develop it under my own name, that I retain the ownership on anything that I write. And he's like, that's fine. That's cool. And I've got a paper trail saying so. And so you just have to cover your butt on that. And so even though verbally he says he owns it, you have to legally determine whether he owns it or whether the company owns it. And if it's something that you don't want them to own, you have to explicitly get them to write a letter saying we do not own this code. So I have no time to do side projects. It's hard to justify it. I really dislike that too. Again, yeah, it's hard when you're working so much that you feel you haven't got the time for that kind of stuff. There is definitely work-life balance going on, and there are things that we have to do as developers to keep our skills sharp. And that actually can come up during an interview, not to like totally change it back into interview prep, but this could come up as an interview question. Like, how do you keep your skills sharp? What have you learned lately? Or are you just doing the same thing over and over every day to where you're not actually progressing in your skill? You're just doing the same thing faster, but you're not actually getting better. You're not actually learning anything new, because that's when you start getting stale, and you don't want to get stale in this job. Now, does that mean you have to work on side projects? No, not at all. You don't have to. Some people will use side projects as a signal to say like, oh, you must really be, interested in technology if you're willing to work on side projects. Or, I've actually heard of companies say, I won't even interview somebody unless I see that they are actively working on a side project. It's like, how privileged are you? Like, not everybody's got the time. I've got a family. I've got 2 kids. One of them's going to be a teenager. Oh, he's going to be a teenager in like 3 weeks. What the heck? How's he a teenager already? I've got stuff that I want to do. I've got streaming that I want to do. I want to be able to play a video game from time to time. I want to be able to watch a movie from time to time. Like, I don't want to be working constantly. And so like, when I started the stream tonight, I was kind of showing you like, hey, here's this little Python thing, learning how to use FFmpeg, learning how to, generate thumbnails for YouTube, the right size and proportions and all that kind of stuff. like this, here's just something that I'm learning to keep my skills sharp. So it doesn't have to be like a big project. It doesn't have to be anything public. It doesn't have to be anything that you're actually like putting out for like users or customers or anything like that. It can just be something that sort of scratches that itch a little bit to say like, hey, I just want to dive in and learn some new data structure. I'm just going to spend the week and just read up on it a little bit. But I get what you're saying. Like, not everybody's got that kind of time. Not everybody has time like during a commute. Some people take a bus and so they've got time to read, or they take an Uber and they've got time to read. Some people have to drive themselves or walk and they haven't got the ability to read or listen to a podcast or something like that on their way to and from work. And so I get that. And so I would say, no, you don't have to have a side project. It can be helpful just to keep those skills sharp, but you don't have to. Excuse me. But if you don't have some kind of side project going on, then you have to ask yourself, like, how am I learning and growing and progressing my skill that I'm not going to get stale at what I do? And so you have to figure out how to do that at the job so that you don't get stale in those skills. Excuse me. One sec. There we go. All right, so going back to chat. Let's see. Lately, it seems I'm very in control of my employment situation, which is weird. Okay, cool. Example, a company contacted me 3 times to try to get me in for an interview. I never applied or sent them a resume. I mean, that feels nice when a company chases you down saying like, hey, we want you over here. That does feel really, really nice. So yeah, I mean, if nothing else, even if you're not looking for a job, it can be helpful just to go interview. I've done that at previous jobs too, where I wasn't looking for a job, but I was going to go interview anyway, partly to find out, oh, I wonder how that company does their interview. Or you learn a lot about yourself when you interview. You learn about things that you kind of stutter, stammer, like, what your process is. You can kind of refine that process a little bit. You can, learn about like, oh yeah, maybe I need to study up on this or that data structure or this or that algorithm to be able to better answer that question the next time I go to an interview that I do care about. Worst case scenario, you get a job offer out of it and you take it back to your boss and go, hey, this company wants to hire me. I'd really rather stay here though. Is there something we can do to kind of work out like a pay raise or something like that? You have to be careful though. Sometimes that can backfire on you. But and then Dota says, I doubt I'd sign a non-compete. What's your advice on non-competes? It's usually a requirement. If the company requires you to sign that, you have to sign it. If you don't sign it, you don't have a job. And so a lot of companies will make you sign something like that. They don't want you working on something on the side where you're directly competing with what they do. There have been like tons of lawsuits over the last decade where like Uber was starting up and then someone leaves Uber and they go to work at Lyft. And next thing you know, Lyft has all this cool new technology and then Uber has to sue Lyft saying, well, yeah, you've got all that because they worked over here and they stole all that and they took it over there. Or between like other FANG companies there. For a long time, a lot of FANG companies wouldn't actively recruit from the other companies. They called it poaching back in the day. They wouldn't actively try to recruit somebody from a competing company because they didn't want these kinds of competing things and lawsuits and things like that. And then eventually they started relaxing them. And the first thing that happens is these lawsuits start firing back up. So you want to make good money in the tech industry, become a lawyer. Go be a lawyer for a tech company. You make a couple of bucks for sure. Let's see. I do mob programming every Friday for 2 hours. Yeah. When you mentioned Pivotal, 2 of the people in that group work for similar companies. Yeah, there are a lot of consultancy type firms or staff augmentation firms. There's lots of them out there. And if you like rotating projects on a more regular basis, that would be a good kind of company to go work at. You can learn a ton at those companies. You grow a lot. There can be a lot of intense pressure at those kinds of companies. And I've talked about that in other streams and on the Q&A sessions. We're trying to get a job, especially as an entry-level dev at some of those consultancy firms or staff augmentation firms. You can get a little extra pressure put on you because when you go to those companies, so let's say I own Pivotal Labs and I hire Taya. Let's say I pay Taya $100,000 a year. I'm going to sort of rent her out to this other company for like $250,000, $300,000 worth of money for however long she's working on their project. So I'm generally going to be charging anywhere from 2 to 3 times what I pay her to sort of have her go work on a project for that company. Well, if I hire a company like that to work on my project and I'm paying $1,000, $2,000 per day to have you come in and be an engineer, you better be an expert on that kind of stuff. Like as a business owner, like I want to make sure I'm getting bang for my buck. And so it can put a lot of pressure on an entry-level dev where you're looked at as an expert. You have to have answers. You have to know what to do. You have to be super efficient. You have to be super proficient at what you do. You have to have good process. You need to be solid. You need to be able to teach them things. And that's not always the case as an entry-level dev. And so it can feel very daunting starting your career in that kind of role. It's not impossible, but just be aware that if you do get that kind of job, there can be a little bit of an increased pressure there, just because you're going to be viewed as an expert, and you have to have that mindset, and you have to be super professional all the time. So yeah, keep those kinds of things in mind if you're going to go for a job like that. But if you're the kind of person where you like rotating projects all the time, if your company isn't large enough to have lots of projects on the go all the time, then a consultancy type of job could be a good fit for you. But not everyone's cut out for that. And if you don't like, switching projects all the time, like you want to work on something and go super deep and learn a ton and become an expert in that thing, then maybe you want to focus on more of a product-based business instead. Cool. Good to see you, Creature. Catch you next stream. Curse of Hole 6, good to see you in chat. My manager's absolutely on board with not needing side projects to learn and finding opportunities within our stack for languages or frameworks that might interest me. That's awesome. That's rare, and that's really cool. I like that your manager recognizes that they don't want to burn you out. It could also be a bit of a precautionary method that they don't want you working on side projects because they want you dedicated to the company and what they do. But it sounds like they're doing a really good job taking care of folks. So definitely love that. I'm considered mid to senior. I worked at a consultancy. Absolutely felt that pressure to perform. Yeah, we were in high demand and charged $7,500 to $7,500 a week. So $1,000 a day per engineer. And when we worked with Pivotal Labs, we had an engagement at SendGrid. We had a lot of their engineers, and we were paying that kind of money. It was pretty ridiculous, the amount of money that we spent on that project. But it worked out great. And I have a ton of respect for the folks at Pivotal. I worked with some really, really good people. One of them, his name is Chris, I think. Yeah. I want to try to have him on the stream sometime just to talk about like what it's like to be a consultant. But also as a contractor, he also does a lot of contract work too. I've had a few conversations with people that do like full-time contracting or full-time consulting. And I'm debating having them on the stream just to talk about like what's an interview look like for them when they go to interview at a company. What sort of process do they have to go through? What kinds of questions do they have to answer? Like, are they doing the typical tech challenge, or are they just answering, like tech trivia kinds of things to make sure that, okay, you really are the expert that I'm paying $1,000 a day for? And so, yeah, it matters quite a lot. Taking a look through chat again. Cool. Yeah, no other questions coming up. Yeah, the idea of mob programming is kind of interesting, where you've just got like a whole bunch of people working on code all at the same time, or doing some kind of pairing or things like that. I think it's really good to get perspectives from other people. That's why I run the stream the way that I do, and I love having people on the stream so that we get perspectives. So it's not just me and my perspective. Like, here's how I write a cover letter. But, I started that whole stream with like, opinions are like armpits, don't just listen to my advice. Like, I think I've got good advice. That's why I do streaming, but I shouldn't be the only voice that you listen to. I think it's important that you get perspective from other people. And so, especially with programming and coding and how to do different kinds of coding, I think it's important to kind of gain those perspectives and learn how other people do things for sure. Our mob came up with some new concepts that other mobs weren't using. So tell me a little bit more about this mob programming. Like, is it a regular kind of thing? Like, how big are these mobs of people that you work on in code? Like, what kinds of code do you work on and things like that? I'm a little bit curious now if you could tell me a little bit more about what that experience is. And is that something that other people can get involved in? Is it remote or is it in person? That kind of stuff. I'd love to hear a little bit more about it. So your mob is 5 to 6 people. Cool. And if there are other questions about interview prep and so on, I'm happy to take those. Otherwise, we're just kind of hanging out. We're having kind of a chill evening for a change. The first part of the video is just that Python script, so I'll probably trim that down a little bit later and just extract just that Python script video, and then I'll post that up later. It's a blackjack app. We're currently switching from one-player blackjack to multiplayer. Very cool. I love card games. The mechanics of card games are decently straightforward. I won't say they're easy, but they're decently straightforward. Like once you know the rules of, blackjack or, Texas Hold'em or whatever, like you can generally sit down and like figure out how to write the code for those rules. Or like a game like Battleship, like Taya, if Taya's still on the stream, Taya had to build a Battleship game. Like you sunk my Battleship if you played that. Had to build that in Ruby as a command line interface game. So, building out game mechanics is interesting. It gets you thinking a little bit deeper about what goes into actually building a game. And you go from something like blackjack to something like World of Warcraft, and just all of the mechanics that have to play together and all the multiplayer systems and just this, communication streams of sending data all around the world, to have people fighting together, and all the timing of things and when to start playing animations and how all the different game mechanics of different armor and weapons and all this stuff play together. It's pretty mind-boggling when you sit down and really break it down and start playing that stuff out. Switching to multiplayer is very complex. It was shocking. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, there's a lot involved with just the communication layer, much less the game mechanics of like how do we show different players like which card got played and all that kind of stuff. So all the code is TDD'd, which is awesome. I love TDD. Good job. We use a timer and a shell script to switch people. That's pretty cool. Do you use something like oh shoot, the name just escaped me. It starts with a T. It's a thing that you can use in your editor to actually like have multiple people like code together in an editor, or you literally like in person and you're like swapping things around. No, it's not MobT. Shoot, I forget what it's called. I'm pretty sure it starts with a T now. Oh, what's that thing called? Well, Visual Studio has live share. CodePen's a good one. Code Together is a good one. Can't think of the name of it now. Mob2 is the timer. Remote mobbing or something like that is a shell script. So it's kind of cool that they've got something kind of semi-automated for doing those things. Yeah, I wish I could find this thing in a hurry. I'm pretty sure it starts with a T. No, it's gonna bug me now. Cool, thanks for sharing the link to that mod programming. I'll definitely check that out a little bit later. Tuple. It's called Tuple. Tuple. There's a way that you can work on stuff together. It's Mac only apparently, but it's a remote pairing tool. I think some students at Turing tended to use that one since they're 100% remote now for about the last year and a half. Some students have been looking for remote pairing and things like that. There are plugins for VS Code and things like that that you can kind of mimic that as well. JetBrains also has a few things built into some of their editors as well. Huge shout out to JetBrains. I love your editors. Keep building them. Cool. Gotta be careful how much I lift with this arm. Not a lot of strength in there yet, not a lot of mobility, but it's getting better. Gradually able to move the arm around a little bit more. PT's been going good. The stretching feels good, but sure aches after a while. But anyway, cool. I'm happy to just like hang out and nerd out and chat and stuff for a while. So did I get my vaccine? I did. I got my vaccine back in April and May. I got the Moderna vaccine. And the second shot knocked me out for a couple of days for sure. It was no fun, but feels good being vaccinated. There's talk now about maybe a third booster or something. Like people might have to get another booster, but see how that one goes. They have Pfizer. They just shut down our school. That sucks. My my soon-to-be 13-year-old got the Pfizer, and so did my wife. And he did well after the second shot. He didn't get too ill. We made sure that we got it like on a Saturday afternoon, so he had the weekend to kind of recover. But he did really well with it. My wife, I think, got knocked out for about a day. Felt really tired. But me with the Moderna one, I actually got like really bad flu symptoms on the second day. But 3 students got COVID, so they shut down 2 families of school and 1 junior high. Wow, that's a lot. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. We just got a notice from the school where our kids go that they had to consider it an outbreak because 5 students from different classes were diagnosed. But the way that they're doing the distancing and the cleaning and things like that, because a good chunk of the school now are able to get the vaccine, that they're not like quarantining and sending everybody remote. So we'll see how it plays out. Be pretty interesting. I've heard the FDA may give emergency approval for 10 and under to get the vaccine. I heard October, but that might have got pushed. But it'd be interesting to see how that plays out in the near future. Because right now our youngest son, he's under 12, so he can't get vaccinated. So anytime we go out as a family, we all mask up and things like that. But some parts of Colorado, they're going back to masking even indoors. So we're trying to figure out at Stream what we're going to do at our office. It's the Stream logo up here that I 3D printed. We're trying to figure out what we're going to do at Stream. Because Boulder County requires masks indoors now. And so I think we're just telling, like, we've been remote friendly for a long time now. So I think people are cool with just like, yeah, just stay home. It's fine. Everybody's still getting their work done and stuff. So 11 cases and 10 of them can't be vaccinated. That's hard for sure. That's tough. Cool. Well, any other interview questions? I'm happy to continue to nerd out on interview prep and tech interview guide. Oh, I wanted to mention a couple other things. So Thursday, I got that panel coming up. So Thursday panel is going to be all about like questions you should ask on the interview. I'm also working right now at splitting my daily email series into 2 lists. Right now, it's kind of a mix of behavior and technical questions and a couple of like generalized questions. And I'm thinking about splitting them into just like technical questions and behavioral questions, and then maybe do a third list of like actual tech challenge breakdown. I'd started planning that out back in the spring, and then other stuff came up at work. It just didn't allow me to get to it, but I should get to it hopefully over the fall and the winter to start that third list. So the daily email series that I've got right now, I'm probably going to split into 2 parts, one for technical questions, one for behavioral questions. And so it won't run for 6 weeks anymore. It'll be shorter. Or I may do like every other day or something instead of every single day. Ultimately, I'm also working on like some distribution software for mailing list software, where I can basically let you as a subscriber come in and say, I want to get a message every day, or I want to get it every 3 days or once a week or something like that. Where for each of the mailing lists, you can set your own pace and frequency for when you want to get them. So if you just want a blast of all of them all at the same time, you can get them all at once, or you can say like, send me 5 a day, or send me 1 per day, or send me 1 every 5 days. Like, you'll be able to set that frequency. So I've been kind of piecing that together. I want to build it out as an API, and then use that to like actually get my subscribers into the software that then broadcasts out the emails every morning and stuff like that. So got a handful of things that I want to kind of accomplish with that over the fall. So keep an eye out for that. That'll probably be, let's see, we're late September now. It'll probably be November before I get around to that. But we'll see how that goes. Dota asks in chat, how can I screen companies to know that I want to work there? That's a good question. A lot of that will come from networking and outreach. So as you get to know people there, you'll get to know, like, do I want to work in an environment like that? So you need to ask them what their day-to-day is like, what their boss is like. Because the saying is true, you don't quit your job, you quit your boss. And that can be true for a lot of things. So you need to ask them very hard questions and very pointed questions about what it's really like to work there. What kinds of projects are they working on? What kind of autonomy do they have? You need to ask those kinds of questions. And those are the kinds of things that we're going to get into a little bit on Thursday. Although Thursday's panel is going to be a little bit more about like you're already at the interview. some of these questions you need to ask before you even interview at the company, before you even apply at the company to know if you want to work there. And so I've got a video on YouTube, how to do company research. I'll see if I can find that real quick while I talk here. But while you're kind of researching that company, you basically have to figure out, I'll paste it in chat here. So this is the company research video. What you need to do is figure out what is your priority. Like, what do you want as a work environment? What kind of manager do you want? What size of team do you want? What kind of work-life balance do you want? And then use those as your questions when you're doing your network and your outreach to people, and find out, does this company fulfill these things that I want? Now, there's needs and there's wants. And so the things that you absolutely must need to do your job and do them effectively, you want to like prioritize at the top of the list. And then other things that aren't as important will be down at the bottom of the list. And then you want to try to find your own answers. So that'll prove to them that you're doing research on the company. And you'll go in and, so in that video, I show you like a spreadsheet and how I track that kind of stuff on a spreadsheet, but there's lots of different kinds of tools that you can use to track that stuff. But for anything that you can't find an answer for, that's where, when you reach out to somebody and you do that networking, you want to say like, hey, I was able to find this information, or hey, I'm trying to find this information. I can't find it anywhere. Can you answer this about working at the company? And then fill in that spreadsheet or whatever. And then ask yourself, like, is it okay now that I know that? Or is it okay that I can't find an answer and they don't want to tell me an answer to that either? Is that okay with me? And then over time, you'll start to kind of, fill in those blanks a little bit more and be able to determine, like, do I want to apply there? Do they match the values that I have? Do they match the kinds of qualities of the company? Do they serve the kinds of customers that I want to be helping in the world? What's important to you? And what's important to you is not going to be what's important to me. And so I would encourage you to go check out that YouTube video and like start planning that stuff out. And if you have other questions about it, you can always reach out to me. I'm happy to chat about that kind of stuff a little bit more. Dote also says there's a bunch of CTOs in town that I was initially impressed with that I really question if I want to work for them. And a large portion of the companies aren't doing the things I want to work on. So that sounds to me like you've got some ideas in mind of what you want to do. And so I used to ask a question when I taught at Turing to some students when I would work through interviewing and things like that, and the career coaching side of it, where they're like, I don't know what kind of job I want. It's like, well, if I could pay all your bills for a year, what would you be building? Like, what would really excite you to get up in the morning to go work on something every morning? What would that project be? What would it entail? What kind of person would it serve? Tell me about what your day-to-day would be like. What kinds of software would you be building? What language would you be building in? Because those are all things then that you need to go chase and figure out, okay, well, are there companies doing that kind of thing? If so, you need to go apply there, because being able to share that passion with them as part of the application process, as part of that cover letter, and as part of those initial phone screens or the network and outreach, you're going to really stand out to them because you're bringing more than just technical skill. You're bringing that passion, that drive, that you care about what's going on. And so it can really change that initial set of conversations. So if you've got ideas of what you want to do, go figure out how to find a job doing that, or go make a job doing that. If you've got the means to like do some consulting or to work on that kind of stuff, I would encourage you, go explore those avenues if you have the ability to. Not everybody does. And you kind of mentioned earlier, Dota, that you don't have a lot of time for side projects, and that's okay too. But if you're not as happy at the company where you are, and you're not able to find other companies that really pique your interest and go, oh yeah, I want to go work there, then maybe you need to look outside the area, find a remote job, or relocate maybe if that's a possibility, or like I say, like find a way to work part-time at a company and then like put some of your part-time effort into this other thing that you would rather be doing. It's easier said than done. I understand that. I'm not trying to say that everybody's got all kinds of like free time and resources in the world to like quit a full-time job and just go explore their passion. But if that's something that's really important to you, then it's something that maybe talk to a career coach of some kind, whether it's me or Martin McGovern or someone like that, where we can really sit down with you, find out what it is you want to be doing, and then sort of like find a way to coach you into that and say, well, have you thought about this kind of company? And even if that company doesn't pan out, do they have competition that you can go talk to their competition and go see what they're like, or where they're based, or what kind of salary they pay? And does that check off any of those things on your list that are important to you? So that's kind of how I would start that. So I would go watch that company research video, and then based on that, like, reach out and talk to folks in the industry, like talk to your connections and find out, does anybody else I know work in something like that? How did they get started in that? Or are there companies out there that do that kind of thing? Dot also says, I'm not sure if I want to work with other developers. Okay, if I did, I'd want it to be mobbing. After some experience in the industry, I have a hard time trusting other developers. Okay. Usually I had no trouble with trusting them. Turing looks really good, lots of dev jobs. Well, so Turing is a school. It's not a development company themselves. So that's it's a 7-month coding program. If you have a problem with trusting, like working with other developers, I would probably start to ask questions like, where does that distrust come from? Being able to mob on things is one thing. In my experience in the industry, I would say like any more than 2 people working on a thing at a time, it starts to exponentially become less efficient. Yeah, you've got lots of eyeballs on it and you get lots of opinions, but it can slow things down, and not everybody's going to be 100% engaged. And I actually saw this a lot at Turing on group projects where we'd have anywhere from 3 to 10 students working on a project together. And if a whole bunch of them were crowded around a monitor, or a whole bunch of them were on a Zoom call at the same time, you know, not everybody's really paying attention. Not everybody's 100% engaged. Not everybody's really, you know, helping the way that they could effectively be. If somebody was saying, well, why don't you 2 people go work on this, and you 2 people go work on that, and you 2 people go work on this other thing, and then we'll all come back and, you know, if we need to sync up later. I think that that's a better strategy. Having like no more than, well, ideally 2 people working on it, no more than 3. Anything more than 3 and you're actually losing productivity at that point. And a lot of companies are going to feel the same way. They don't want to, you know, if they're paying you all, let's use round numbers, they're all paying you $50 an hour to program something, and there's 5 of you working on something. Now they're paying $250 an hour to get 1 unit of work as output. Where if you did like 2 groups of pairing and then 1 person kind of floating back and forth, now you get 2 units of work for that $250. Plus you've got more knowledge sharing kind of going around. So a lot of companies aren't going to be great at thinking about that sort of mob mentality where it's like a whole bunch of people trying to, it's SendGrid, we call it swarming. We're all going to swarm on something. Not a lot of companies are going to really go for that, unfortunately. And so you need to be able to find ways of like, okay, well, I'm going to work with like 1 or 2 other people and go from there. It's that you don't trust them to do good work. Well, I would question where that comes from. Like, I don't want to sound like I'm a therapist or anything like that, but, you know, everybody has different quality levels. And I think as a team, you can certainly sit down and talk about, you know, here's how we're going to work. These are the standards that we want to follow as a team, and agree on that. And at Turing, for example, we use something that we call define the relationship, or a DTR process, where you sit down and you all fill out like, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses, this is what I bring to the team, this is what I want to learn from the team, these are the hours that I'm available to work, these are standards that I want to follow, these are practices that I agree I will follow, like TDD, you know, or document-driven design, or like whatever that's going to be. And you are going to agree as a team that this is how we are going to work. And if somebody deviates from that, then you get back together as a team and say, hey, this isn't working out. We all agreed to this, and you know, you're going off doing your own thing. Like, we need to be able to trust each other to work on this. So if there is a distrust there, I would start to examine where that's coming from, and examine like whether that's a valid trust concern or just a, you know, is it a you thing? So I think it's something that maybe you need to internalize and reflect on a little bit. I don't think it's possible for me to sell you on mobbing without showing you. I mean, I've been to hackathons, and I've been to, you know, like I said, you know, I taught at Turing for 4 years. So I saw lots of giant groups of students trying to get together and like, you know, trade a keyboard around and let me write that bit of code. Now you write that bit of code. And it's just not as effective. I've found, in my experience, it hasn't been effective as having smaller teams of people actually go out and actually like work on things, and then figure out how do we rotate those pairs where if I'm working on a thing, you come and work with me for a little while, and then you continue that and I go work with someone else, and someone else comes and works with you, and now you get to share all of that knowledge with them, and the team that I go work with or pair with, you know, now I'm sharing that knowledge, they're sharing knowledge with me, and so eventually you're kind of disseminating that knowledge and information across your whole team without everybody working on the same thing all at the same time. But yeah, I mean, I've never done this mob thing before, so you know how that actually works in operation, I'm not familiar with, so I'm not going to pretend to know. I'll definitely check out that GitHub link that you shared though, because I think it'll be interesting to sort of take a look through that and see what's going on with that remote programming thing. But cool, let's see what else we got in chat going on. I definitely like it more than pairing. Industrial logic actually only mobs, if I understand it right. Again, yeah, so it depends on the kind of thing that you're building and so on. But just taking a look through that GitHub thing right now. Open source command line tool written in Go. It's the fastest way to hand over code in Git. Okay. Keeps your branches clean. Okay, so it's basically just a way of, I've done this thing, now I'm going to check that into Git, push it up to GitHub or something, you're going to check it out, pull that code down, and you can continue to work while we're on a Zoom call or something. So yeah, I get that. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting idea. I think how it actually plays out as far as you know, having like 5 or 6 people all working on the same thing. Like I said, it can be effective when you're in kind of an ideation phase, but when you're in an implementation phase, I wonder how effective that would be. But it might be something I would have to try to kind of form an opinion on. So. Okay, so it just rotates around from the sounds of what you have in chat. You just do like mob next or whatever, and it like hands things off to the next person. That's cool. And you need a coach to do it properly. So there's still somebody there to kind of like guide you through that. So yeah, that makes sense. Cool. All right. Well, I think I'm going to wrap up. We've been going for about an hour and a half now. So I'm just going to wrap up and get this video up on YouTube, and we'll go from there. So definitely check out Thursday. Thursday is going to be the panel. And I'll start marketing that one a little bit over the next couple of days and get that one hyped up. So watch on LinkedIn. I'll do like a big blast on LinkedIn and do a couple of posts on Twitter. I think it'd be good to kind of talk about like, these are the kinds of questions that you need to ask as a candidate. You're already at the interview. You've already gotten through the interview or gotten into the interview stage. What kinds of questions should you be asking that company? I think those are important things to go over. So. I'm not on Discord, but you can do like bang YouTube, bang LinkedIn, bang Twitter. It'll give you all those details. I am on Discord, but I just don't share that publicly. I use Discord more for gaming than software related things. Cool. Yeah, bring more questions by all means. I mean, that's what I'm here for. I love questions. I love just nerding out on stuff too. It's nice. It was kind of a nice change tonight. Not too many questions about interview prep, and that's okay too. Doesn't always have to be interview prep. That's why I started with just going over that Python script that I built for splitting the larger videos into smaller bits. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Cool. All right, folks. Well, we'll wrap up here. Thanks for hanging out. Let's see. Is there anybody that we can raid? Not really. But Bob Ross is online, so if you're in the mood for some calming painting, you can check out Bob Ross on Twitch. Cool. Well, that's all I got for tonight. We'll catch everybody later, and we'll see you on Thursday. Cheers.